In this dystopian world, human had produced a great deal of polluted air and water to the environment on the ground. They are incapable to live on the ground. Therefore, people have found an upper world land located above the polluted ground and is separated from the ground. However, the population that are moved to the upper world are limited by the small area of the world. Therefore, the upper world is only for the rich, and the polluted ground is for the poor. Behind this situation, the government is manipulating.
So the first verse for our dystopian dictionary is the float. It is a noun, and the definition of it is an official name for the upper class that live in the floating city. It has a neutral connotation, and the example for it is, "We have received a lot of information from the float," said the speaker. And the purpose is to create a proper name for the higher class without actually saying lower or upper. The second word is called the wanderers. It is a noun, and is an official name for the lower class that live in the polluted land. It has a neutral connotation, and the example is that as the supplies failed, the wanderers started to gather all in a sudden. They ran as fast as they could in order to appropriate the supplies to themselves. The purpose is also to create an official name for the lower class instead of saying lower and upper. The third word is called floggers or flogger. It is a noun, and it is a disrespectful, discriminative, and emotional name for upper classes people, the floats, who lived on floating island. It has a negative connotation. Example is that those floggers are dumping their rubbish more frequently than before, said one deeper class person. The purpose is to express a negative emotion of dissatisfaction, disdain, and disgust toward the upper class. The fourth word is called white knight. It is a verb and it means doing a part-time job. It has a neutral connotation. An example sentence is that the poor living on the ground said, "We have to start to white knight, or we cannot go to the upper world." The purpose of making this word is to reveal how busy are the poor people. The last word is called detransferred. It is a noun, and it means a consoling way of describing the people who are against the arrangement of government, mostly the poor, who were killed and made into resource for food. And it has a negative connotation. An example sentence is thus, "This good came from the transfer." The purpose of making this word is to hint the cruel process of killing and reforming citizens into food source.
And in our propaganda, we use a method called the glittering generalities. The green words on top indicate the differences between the floating city and the people who live underneath. And the floating city's life is like our daily life right now. And this can give the floating city citizens a sense of priority and make them feel more favorable of the government. They like the government more. And also, it is shown only to the floating city citizens so that the poor won't feel they were discriminated by the government or by the floating city citizens. In the second propaganda, we use a technique called fear. By using the fear of people, the government can control the poor people better, and they may say that the underworld shelter is the best destination for them and stop complaining. Also, comparing the world outside and the world underneath contributes to the persuading purpose.
Here is a brief overview about our dystopian society. First, our environment is facing several really serious issues. In the agricultural aspects, plants are not able to grow on Earth, so basically everything is polluted by heavy metals. The problem of overpopulation is really causing its negative effects. This not only destroys the economic system, but also causes unrepairable environmental problems. Air pollution is also a severe problem in our dystopian society. The living condition between the upper world and the deeper world really differed. In the upper world, people can live in big houses powered by the sun or live in small but modern apartments. But people in the deeper world can only live in tiny rooms underground. They cannot even see lights. Everything is heavily polluted, and they have very little resource. Upper world citizens have access to healthy food and clean water, which are not heavily polluted, but citizens living in the deeper world can only eat the leftovers from the upper world citizens or other polluted food underground. People living in the upper world wear plain but good quality clothes. However, the clothing in the deeper world are fashionable and colorful, but with poor quality since there aren't many materials for them to use. Upper world citizens have their basic physical and mental needs, and they actually want to make their lives better. People living in the deeper world, in contrast, are only trying to figure out ways to survive. There's no time left for them to think of bonding and communicating with other people, or even imagining of improving their living status.
Alright, it's time for me to introduce our dystopian world. Our dystopian world starts with higher power behind, which usually is the government, but in our world is the rich in control with the government, and the government usually works with the rich. This makes that the laws and policies presented by the government usually serve for the rich instead of the poor, and the poor's rights has been violated by this. Also, when the policy carried out, the richest will take action in order to control the poor. Since they have control over the government, they have the access of military and they have the ability to cut the resource the poor gets. And they use the transports which scientists developed to transport from the floating islands to the underground in order to enforce the law. And the policy functions smoothly because the poor usually trade with each other for resources to maintain their basic life, and underground is lack of resource, and so they need their supplies from the rich. And the rich's life is basically the same as the world we live here. And the arrangement is that the poor will suffer from the rich, and the people who disagree with the rich will have severe punishments, like being banished from the underground and eventually become a resource of others. This is a severe punishment which the rich did in order to strengthen their control. And the relationship with our society is the development of technology, pollution, and economic debt. Our technology is developing, and it might develop a way to solve the environmental problem, but with the development of technology, severe social problems to have effects of our society.
The conclusion is the world is cruel and unfair, and modern society can cause the cruel and unfair in the future dystopian world. What's more, the dystopian world is a warning for modern people. Consequently, in order to decline the degree of cruel and unfair in the future, people need to take actions now.